I'm Michelle.
And I'm Katherine.
And we're here at the Healthy Hurried Human Podcast,
where we talk about keeping pace in a world that never slows down. Welcome back to the Healthy Hurried Human Podcast. I'm Katherine, and I'm here with Michelle.
Yeah, hi. We are going to be diving right in today talking about a fun topic. We're calling this Rebuilding Trust in a Post-Chaos Culture.
When I first saw this title, I thought she meant like the world was chaotic. And so Michelle was defining, why don't you give us what your definition is of a post-chaos culture? Because it's much more specific.
Yeah, it's specific to work in that how do we build back trust after a layoff, restructuring, or rapid change? Does that bring it down for you?
Yes. So it's not culture as in,
because really everybody could think
United States culture. It's the culture within your environment of the office, the work, the company.
Right.
Specific.
Not the dumpster fire that people like to. I'm sorry. I just threw her off because people like to look at, current society and think everything is a dumpster fire. That is not what we're talking about. So, that would take us. But today we are doing something we have not ever done before. So I'm looking forward to this, and also kind of with trepidation. We are going to use a very current case study to talk about this, because why not? It's there. We want to talk about what is it does from the viewpoint of leaders and the people who are making executive decisions and changes for a workplace or companies or organizations on a whole scale. And then also from the side of the people that it impacts the most, which are your everyday workers. Really what Voxygen is all about, because we build the bridge between those two entities. But the case study we're going to dive into and probably joke a little bit is Microsoft. Currently, Microsoft has laid off. You corrected me this morning.
No, because it just happened.
Well, it just happened. So, in the last couple of weeks, they have laid off 9,000 employees. And then this morning, we found out that they've added another 6,000.
Other way around. They had laid off for a grand total of 15,000 this calendar year, because they had done 6,000 previously, but within the last few days they laid off 9,000. And we were looking into, you had seen that news article, and we were researching, because we knew we were coming in to talk about this specifically. We were researching what areas of focus that they were laying people off in, and what their statement was because they are focusing now more on AI and using that more internally. But to add to it is that then they roll out that they were able to save $50 million last calendar year. And
so they saved the money last year, but then did all the laying off this year.
Yes.
Make that make sense.
Oh,
it doesn't.
Not only does it not make sense, but when you are in a culture that says, we have a profit, or we made this money, and then you turn around and lay people off, that's sending those two messages don't equate. And the only answer is you don't value your human capital, or you don't think that they're necessary.
So we started this when you and I were talking. I was like, I want to put myself in the proverbial position of, I work for Microsoft. I'm a manager. I'm a leader. Maybe even, right under this, I'm not in the executive room making these big decisions. So I'm somewhere in there working, and somehow I have managed to not get laid off. How am I looking at Microsoft? How am I feeling about Microsoft?
That's a great question.
And the very simple, short answer is, I'm looking to leave because I do not trust them. I do not trust them, and I am 100% sure they do not value me. And at any given minute, they could decide that they can replace me, which somebody could be listening to this and say, oh, are you just now getting there? Because I think that's somewhat been, I remember my parents having similar conversations when I was in middle school, high school, talking about their jobs. The mistrust isn't new of corporate America. This is not a new thing. But I think what can be a little bit new is how quickly it's happening.
There's so many thoughts running through my head about this. Like when you said this is not anything new, I've been was discussing a term the other day, the robber baron, like back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when the railroads were being built and when the industry of America was booming, and you had these half a dozen or more than that people who were the ones driving the change, had all the money, owned the railroads, and they were doing cost cutting and things. And they had this term robber baron because they were hoarding masses of money for themselves and necessarily, unhealthy working conditions. And it was the rise of the unions were coming in and looking into kind of what that meant. And it was just an interesting concept. This is not anything new in our world that people will use within a system and find a way to be selfish and greedy.
Right.
The problem that we have right now in our current world is that the workforces that are here, millennial, Gen Z, the next ones that are coming, even Gen X, work-life balance is too important for us, and we're not buying the company line anymore. Mm-hmm. And so that erodes dedication and loyalty and trust aspect. And that's where you and I were originally going with this, is that what happens when there's a buyout or when there's a change or when maybe that the company is struggling financially and they have to cut corners and they deem some jobs unnecessary, and your favorite colleague you work with has left. So we were approaching this whole topic from how do we help equip leaders to say, using our KFIs, there is...
What is it they need to understand?
What do they need to understand, and how important it is that they address and communicate there and rebuild the trust. It's vital for you to rebuild the trust. Then we find this.
Okay, but do you feel like, or have an opinion, that leadership and decision boards and exec teams who are making this, do you think that they see that as a high value, that once we make this decision and we do this, do you think that I've often wondered that, is that a discussion that you're having of, hey, when we do this, when we pull this trigger, when we, for whatever the reason is that we're doing it, we're going to really have a workforce that does not trust us?
I think that it depends on how. Well, I guess I do have an opinion about it, and it depends on how in touch the leadership is with the fervor and the humanity, the human connection of the workforce. I
think it's how in touch they are, but I think it also speaks to their value. If they are a company who have built and have a history of valuing their workforce in the human aspect of their workforce, I would hope and I would like to believe that is a conversation.
It takes skill to have uncomfortable conversations.
Yes.
And I can think of a number of scenarios with companies we've worked with where it was necessary to make the changes, but it meant someone didn't get a promotion that year. Somebody was promoted above them. They went with a different direction. And the leadership is stuck with we don't really want to tell the truth about why we made this decision. Mm-hmm. So 2 things. Number 1, no communication is communication.
That's right. Let's say that again.
No communication is communication.
That's
and
right.
Do you want to control the narrative? And because if you don't control the narrative, somebody else will control the narrative.
That's right.
Guarantee you there is gossip going on in your company, and do you want to be in front or behind it? Doesn't solve the HR problem that sometimes you just can't tell people things. That is a huge problem. The other one that I want to point out that I think is really interesting that we want to talk about is that the leadership has not made this decision lightly. They've probably been in conversations for a while. I know personally from a company I work with, plus some of our customers, that there are people that may have been on the proverbial chopping block for a year.
Right. Months to a year.
That leadership has been in conversation with their direct manager saying, we don't think this is producing. We think we're going to close this down. And when it finally is done, they've had a whole year to process it.
That's right. This is so key. This is really key.
Leadership has bought in and they're okay with it and they're making the announcement. And what they don't see is the ripple effect.
The disorientation that they've caused.
Oh, talk about disorientation. I love that term.
Well, they have been, if you think about the playground spinny thing, when you're on it, not me, but other people, when you're on it, you can almost start to, I've heard people say you pick a focal point and you can survive it. And that's what the leadership has done. They're spinning because they probably don't love this decision that they're making. Or I would hope that there's some weight to it, knowing you're going to lay off teams or even a person, that as you're spending months on that, you found your focal point, you found your why, you found the value to it and what it's going to, you found where your North Star is in this decision. But when you are giving this decision, not just to the person or the people it impacts, but the entire community that they were a part of. So now if you get rid of your entire sales team, that sales team is ingrained and interwoven into so many other teams that those teams are disoriented by the fact that you've just wiped out and they haven't been in this decision for a year. And so they need their months, definitely weeks, or
focal point.
They need that. Yeah, but that takes time to find that focal point. They're not going to find it immediately. And so you and I were talking about this. We want leadership to understand that they are causing a disorientation and that when you do not communicate, you are communicating. And so someone's will fill Southern accent came out, will fill that communication void with their own narrative. So when you don't, communicate, and two, understand that you've created the disorientation and be part of creating the orientation.
People have too much to lose. When you start laying people off, if you didn't get laid off from Microsoft, you are now either looking for another job or you're concerned that the next wave, I think they said 3 waves of layoffs.
So another one's coming.
No, I think they've already had 3 this calendar year.
I thought there was another one coming in August, maybe, or September.
Oh, that's right.
I think
that's right. There is another. That's the 3 for this. Anyway, sorry.
For this year.
When you have that and there's a lack of insecurity and a lack of stability, people have too much to lose. You're not going to get honest feedback. People aren't going to want to rock the boat. So we know what that affects. Stop taking risks, slow down productivity, try to amp up their vitality to the organization, their importance to the organization, divided lines. All of a sudden there's this tension and there's a disruption, an uncomfortability that takes place in your culture. So what do you do about it? How do we, let's share a little bit about how we coach our leaders to walk through this. Well, first of all, you have to acknowledge the fact that you have to figure out how to communicate why this was either not necessarily why this was necessary, but
here's the stance that I think oftentimes leaders make, and I think it's a mistake. leaders in this chaotic time, whether it's layoffs or maybe it's a major restructuring or rapid change, we've heard about that. We're bringing in a whole new computer system or POS system or something like that. And it's rapid change. What happens with leaders is because they see leadership as I need to be strong and I need to be decisive, they see themselves as I'm supposed to be strong and strategic versus I need to be readily available relationally. And that's the mistake I think leaders make in these times, chaotic times, is because I'm going to put all of that, whether it's you're restructuring, whether you've merged or there's been acquired, or you're doing layoffs or bringing in a new computer system or operating system. That's chaotic to your workers. Again, I think leaders don't see it as chaotic because they've been on their own journey of bringing whatever it is into the workforce. So it doesn't seem chaotic to them, but to the workforce, it's highly chaotic. And instead of taking that posture of I'm going to be a strategic leader and I'm going to lead with authority and decisions, that no, really what you need to be is available. You need to be very relationally available to the people you're leading.
If you have a culture or one of your values is your employees and you have to make layoffs, that should be gut wrenching. We were working, when you're working with a company that like an employee owned company that I've been a part of. And there were, if you have a situation where there's either loss of productivity or part of the company is, you're downsizing. One of the beautiful things about an employee-owned company that a lot of times people have the opportunity in an employee-owned company to say, collectively, we'd rather take a cut in pay than for people to lose their jobs. And so that is always an opportunity to do that. And in an employee-owned company, a lot of times people would try to retain and we saw that during the downturn in the economy in 2008, a little bit again a couple years later, where companies as a whole took a reduction of pay so that they could retain their jobs and not lose anybody to the jobs. And a lot of that was because they realized they needed people to do their job. Just because you fire someone because of you reduce the workforce because of finances, the job still has to be done.
And I think I know when I've got my ear to the ground with workers and employees now, that's the pain point that I'm hearing is in the resentfulness that is an undertone of, that I'm at this particular, job or organization, they've laid off and they've just spread the work over. And so I feel like I'm doing 2.5 jobs. I've heard that. I'm doing 2.5 jobs or I'm doing 3 different jobs and I can't get it all done. And so that builds resentment. And
they didn't get an increase in pay. Or it wasn't clear, only part of the job was given to someone else and the other part's still out there. So they don't have other people lose support.
There's a education company that I am connected to right now out of DC who has, I think, lost some funding, and so they're scrambling. But they were also bought out recently by a completely different team. And oftentimes what happens is they come in and they want their own team. So they let go of at the executive level.
Sure.
But one of the complaints that is happening right now is that the person they've put in charge of all the teams has no idea what the teams do. And this person is also in charge, this executive level person is also in charge of reducing the workforce. And,
oh, no. But we see it all the time,
and
Michelle.
We see it all the time.
And
my question was, how did this person get into this position? Well, they were friends with the new, and
The social game at work.
That's right. And to me, what's happening with this particular, and this is where it happens all the time, not knowing the teams, but also in charge of reducing the workforce, is a disaster. That is a combination of disaster because, and with them in particular, just started reducing teams, reducing and getting rid of departments altogether, and then realizing, oh my gosh, whoops. And and I have seen companies where they don't really recover from that.
No.
Because you
let go of the wrong person.
You've let go of the wrong groups, teams, not just one person, but you've let go of too many people in the right place that this is where I kind of like the Glassdoor, where
the company Glassdoor,
where you can where employees have a place to say, be careful.
And that is something I was going to bring up, is that this is not anything new. Like I can think of like 14 different case studies.
That's right.
I just recently was reading the one about the guy who got fired from Walt Disney and started Pixar, right? Like it's just wasn't promoted at Disney, went over, started Pixar. Like it's just, it's common. I think it was Pixar, but there are, now I'm doubting myself. Whoops. It's been going on forever. Mm-hmm. But the visibility right now because of social media.
That's right.
And the social media backlash means that your good name and your goodwill can be dragged through the mud. The perception of a company can have backlash.
But I kind of like it. I will say, coming in through my career, I like it. Now, I do know that it has its dark side to it, right? But I like the accountability that kind of adds, if companies are smart enough to lean into saying, hey, we have to be careful. We have to pay attention to this, because this employees now can talk on a large scale, and we have some accountability here to guard our reputation as to, are we a good place to work? And when you come in, if you've acquired a company and you put the wrong person in place who's in charge of teams and reducing your workforce, there should be a heavy accountability to that. Mm-hmm. Put the right person in place to make that decision. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say it's going to always turn out well and that you're going to have to make good decisions, but you got to make sure you're putting somebody in place who understands what they're doing. And you and I know it's just too common that it's the policy and the social networking of executive teams and leadership. And I think there could be a high price to pay for that. Now, what are some of the things that I want to speak to if you've been working for Microsoft and you've been laid off recently, and you catch this podcast, what are some things that we could say to either you're still working or you're somebody who has just been let go? How do we help that person? And I hope that leadership would lean into this a little bit and listen to this, because I think this is how you as a leader can help those that you're still leading. And part of that is I want individual employees and individual leaders to know it's on you to empower yourself, and you can do it. You can empower yourself. And we talk a lot about empowering questions. And it's time to start engaging in empowering questions. What if you're still in a job in a place, if you happen to be at a Microsoft, they've just had major layoffs, you're still there. You feel nervous, you feel scared. You don't trust it, but it's not like you can just run out and get an easy new job. So what is it that you need to feel secure in your work? That's an empowering question. Again, remember, with empowering questions, we're not trying to get a solution. We're trying to bring clarity. And so what do you need to feel more secure at your job right now? That might be a conversation if you have a boss or a manager that you like and you have a good rapport with. This is a good conversation to have with them. What part of transition feels unclear? That's another question. Or unsettled. What is it that in the position that you're in, what feels unsettled for you? That can bring some clarity. Knowing, because it's kind of naming the boogeyman. And I say this a lot in when I'm doing therapy. A lot of times, if you can put a label and call out, shine a light on the boogeyman so that it's not dark and scary and shadowy, that's what that question does, is it kind of puts a light on what is it exactly that's making you feel unsettled and unclear. And then I think talking about human development and always growing, when you come to these chaotic times or your post-chaotic times, is where do you want to grow? Where do you want to strengthen? This could be where it's like, oh, I've been meaning to go get that extra certification, or I've been meaning to maybe explore this part of my job that I like, and I want to explore and how I can do more of that. What I find interesting in what Microsoft has done, and this is something for you and I to talk about, is Microsoft, everybody has known AI is coming for jobs, but we thought it was going to be in service sector or let me reverse this. I don't think I thought this, that we were going to see AI taking jobs from people who are engineering and IT and then sales. I did not see that being some of the first parts of AI taking over jobs. Do you know what I'm getting at here? I thought it was going to be more like the way we've seen it in the grocery store. Not as many
self-serve checkouts.
Yeah, I thought we were going to see it more in that space. And it kind of makes me mad with Microsoft because they're already hard to get a hold of for any sort of support. But now they're going to be, their sales force. That was very surprising to me that they took their sales force out.
Not completely, but yeah, Salesforce and some of their IT and engineering. I mean,
That's not. That was That's
surprising.
The point. That was the surprising part, is I didn't see it coming for those. And I think maybe culture as a whole might be where I'm at, where we just didn't see that coming. I have feelings about that. It frustrates me. It bothers me.
Why?
Because I think it speaks to that bill of goods that we sell to young adults, like go get jobs in IT and engineering and sales, marketing.
IT is the future.
Right. And I'm like,
social media.
So my feelings are, I feel like we've been selling a bill of goods. Especially to some of the younger generations, or at least ones underneath us, after Gen X. Those were supposed to be some of the secure jobs.
Well, what are the jobs going to look like? I mean, we've seen this from the Industrial Revolution to the computer revolution. I mean, we've seen this happen in our world, and we adapt and we figure out where to go next. I want to talk about, I think that it is harder to rebuild trust in a post-chaos culture if there wasn't an established amount of trust in the beginning, right? Like,
yes, if it wasn't already a value.
That's right. And if you have a value in your company that is people, like if you say your human capital is what your best product that you offer, and you have layoffs that are coming, I think it's very important. And you know that there are people that you're going to probably have to move beyond, and you need to start that narrative sooner rather than later. There's a lot of conversation about performance reviews and do they offer value. And in our coaching, we take people from doing a once a year 360 performance review, although we don't always tell them that they should stop doing that, to quarterly and biweekly check-ins.
That's right.
That are one-on-one with a direct manager, where the employee gets to bring the questions to the manager. Like, it's a more employee driven, and it's more of, it becomes more mentorship. It becomes more training, but it becomes where you begin to see that manager as a person who moves obstacles for you. And the manager knows what the strengths and weaknesses are. We talked about this in an earlier podcast, that this type of mentorship and coaching and development starts with onboarding, starts
That's right.
with talent recruiting. And if you have that already in place in your culture, and you know that the inevitable is probably going to happen where you're going to have to lay people off, then that knowledge that you have of that this is going to come and it's going to impact, that is when you bring in an offboarding process. One of the ways is that you can still retain your culture of value for caring for your employees is helping them find another job.
It is amazing to me how often I run into hearing about that not being included.
Oh, it's very rare.
It should not be rare. It should be the norm, because
it's awkward. I'm not going to lie. It's not easy. It's awkward.
It's awkward, but
some people do not want it.
But you've offered that. They may not take it, and that's okay. But I would rather know that I've offered, and it's up to you to take it. You can't force people to take it, but offer it. Offer that help, but it costs money.
I'll tell you one specific situation that I think you and I have discussed, but we didn't discuss about this, where there was a downturn in the economy, or with this specific industry, they decided to do layoffs, but what they did is they laid off their low performers who were already sticky points. Mm-hmm. And they used the excuse of downturn, we're having to, I've lost the term. Finances. Well, when the finances turned back up again, there were a number of people that kept saying, well, are you going to hire them back? And then what do? They were a poor performer. They should have been let go a year before or 2 years before there. Because, we always have those people that actually play a great social game, but are countercultural, are not doing their job. Mm-hmm. Everybody likes them, but they are not performing what they should be. And that hasn't been put in place and hasn't been held accountable. And then the bigger ups come in and say, reduce your branch or workforce by 10%. And they're pushed towards that one person that probably should have been either managed better or hired or fired beforehand. And then they get the phone calls. Well, so-and-so wants their job back. Well, can we hire him back now? Well, what about this job? Or now and then you don't replace them. It's a problem. And it goes back to manage your employees better from the start.
Yeah.
Bad management, do not use a layoff as an excuse to get rid of key players. Be honest with them. There are some things you can't be honest with. I understand coming from HR, but really and truly, you can say you are not performing at the level that we need you to perform at, and give people an opportunity to change, or say, this isn't working. We're going to help you transition to another job. And that way they don't think that there's hope that they can be hired back.
Right. And that's the,
don't be vague.
Don't be vague. That's the communication thing that we were talking
That's
about
right.
earlier, is when you decide not to communicate and sweep it under the rug, it tends to have a way of coming back to you if you're not going to address it. I think the biggest thing that we would want leadership to understand is that if you're not addressing emotional experience of the people that work for you, you're only rebuilding the org chart.
Oh, yeah.
You're not building the culture.
Oh, yeah.
And that, we'll say it again. If you're not addressing the emotional experience of your people, you're only reorganizing the org chart, and you're not building a culture, not one that's going to serve you.
Listen, for leaders out there who know that they are not touchy-feely they're maybe not on the soft skills, which are critical skills. That's not your forte. Fine. You are a hard driving leader and you get results, and that's great. You got to have somebody on your team that has those critical skills. And if, I love the analogy of there's a reason that men followed Patton into battle. And it's because he was fighting alongside them. Mm-hmm. And he never promised it would be easy. Matter of fact, he told them it was going to be really hard. He never lied to them. There was no disillusionment. They had a common enemy, and he was putting in the hard work too. People followed that man,
right,
all over the world. And if you are not that kind of this is where self-mastery
is key,
and self-awareness for yourself is key as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if you are highly successful at that job. Great. We need you to be highly successful at that job. You don't have to be also excellent at other things. You need to be aware of them. You need to be conscious of them. You need to know that those things have that there is an emotional fallout that's going to happen, and you need to bring in the right people to help with that.
That's right. And that is really what it comes down to. You don't have to be all things to all people, but know where the gaps are and fill them. Do what it takes to fill them with if it's outside of your scope and your abilities, fill it with...
and have some compassion and some self-awareness, and don't announce a $50 million windfall or savings from the year before to try to make yourself look good to your shareholders.
Microsoft, call us.
We just get stuck in the loop of their phone tree, I'm sure.
If anybody from Microsoft is listening, really, really hate your customer service line.
Oh, okay.
Really.
Wow.
4 hours. 4 hours is what I spent.
Did you ever get to a person?
And you know what? 4 hours later, because they sold me something they shouldn't have sold me. And she even said that to me. She's like, we shouldn't have. Right. So hearing that they got rid of their Salesforce, I'm like, oh, maybe you shouldn't have.
Well, but that also goes back to, not to defend their actions, but the training. I went through this with an insurance company, picking up extra insurance for myself. And the number of people that they've outsourced to take these calls that don't know the answer.
Right.
And I finally got somebody at the second or third company I was talking to who said, listen, it's never going to happen. This isn't going to happen. They're not going to waive this. They're not going to, whatever it was dental insurance, and I was trying to waive a waiting period. And they're like, they're never going to do it. You have this and this and this and this. I said, great, sign me up. All right, Lynn, the first person who didn't.
Would have been great had I gotten that 3 people ago.
But you know what? They didn't know.
Right.
They didn't know.
So, but we can talk about that for a long time, and that's been around for a long time. And, some of the big giants out there, we all, Microsoft is just on the front page and it's out there and everybody knows about it. We can take pot shots at them all day long. But the reality is,
we still use their product.
And it's funny. I was telling you, you can find people who are like, yeah, I'm so into Apple products. I love Apple. And then you find people who are like, nope, I love Android. But I have not yet found one person who says, oh God, I love Microsoft. Most everybody is like, but what did I do? I have to use, I
know IT departments that love it, but I
haven't met them.
My
point, though, is that we all feel like we have to use them. And so that's where I want to say to people who run any sort of service where people sort of depend on you and they have to have you, get connected to your mission and values, not just because people have to have you and that's your business plan.
Well, the other way for me to throw this in right at the end, but the other way to erode trust is what it boiled down for me with the insurance was that everything was so nuanced. So they as a corporation were giving themselves a lot of gray. So, and not very black and white, but they want to be black and white with me.
Right.
And that is another leadership tactic where the C-suite gets a lot of gray. gets a lot of flexibility, it's very nuanced. It's a lot of, it's not very
but
firm.
the lower it comes, as it flows down, it gets darker and darker.
It's black and white.
Mm-hmm.
There's no wiggle room for you. It's not nuanced. And that is another way that makes that erodes the distrust in, with a corporation, because you see them either going back on their word or making a decision that doesn't align with the values. And they are like, we've got reasons that we can't tell you about. It looks this,
right.
It's this, you're not at the level of it's above your pay grade to really know what's going on. And that then they have a whole conversation that they're only talking to people above the pay grade.
Right.
And I think that's what we saw with Microsoft, is like they were reporting their earnings for 2024 after 15,000 people had lost their jobs. Now, in a corporation like Microsoft, 15,000 people, I don't even know, I forgot to research of what percentage of their workforce is that. Mm-hmm. And for Microsoft, that may be, not a significant dent in their workforce, but people have a lot to lose. That's a whole family's, income.
It's a lot. It's a lot to the individuals. I'm going to end it one more time with this, because it's important that if you've heard nothing, hear this. If you're not addressing the emotional experience of the people who work for you, who are in your workforce, all you're doing is you're reorganizing the org chart, and you're not creating the culture that's going to serve you. So, thank you for joining us today for this episode of the Healthy Hurried Human Podcast. The Healthy Hurried Human Podcast is presented by Foxygen Consulting. At Foxygen, we provide business and performance psychology and consulting. We believe healthier people make a healthier workplace. Foxygen Consulting, breathing new life into your organization.